Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Strome crisscrossing with Chychrun through center. Send in Wilson on the flank. Cross ice. Ovechkin fires. Score! The chasing days are done. Alex Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer in the history of the NHL.
Alex Ovechkin from Tom Wilson and Dylan Strome at 7:26 of the second period on the power play. It is such a benign stat line in and of itself. But, Neil, the significance is forever reaching.
Oh, absolutely. And I can't imagine somebody breaking it. But then again, we couldn't imagine anybody breaking Gretzky's goal-scoring record either. So I'm sure somebody will come along when the league is up to 48 teams and be able to break it. For today and for 2025, it was quite an event. Quite an event. It was like being at a heavyweight fight. It was like being at a Stanley Cup Game 7. It was people all waiting to see if they were going to see this historical event. And sure enough, it happened. And there was a sea of red jerseys all over that building.
With that, we're going to dovetail right into three things you need to pay attention to, brought to you by UBS Financial Services, Inc. And with that goal, it's number 895, eclipsing Wayne Gretzky. Both of them, ironically, have played 1,487 games in their careers. But as you just mentioned, you were there. And can you encapsulate the atmosphere, the feeling, and just the sense of being present for a piece of history?
Well, I mean, the building was completely sold out, something I've never seen before, even though the building's only been there for 4 years. And it was electric. That's all I can say. It was electric from the warm-up all the way through. It was just electric. And when he got on the ice, there wasn't a person in that building that wasn't looking for number 8 to see when he came on and when he went off. And it was almost like when he went off the ice, okay, you can go back to having your coffee or talking to your friend or something. But then when 8 came back on the ice, everything stopped and you started watching him again. As you know, he's not a puck carrier. He's not a guy that's going to get the puck in his own zone and you got to wait and see like Bobby Hull or Bobby Orr, whether or not he's going to do it on this run down the ice. But when the Islanders took a penalty, the whole place started to shake, knowing that this could be it on this power play.
We're going to speak more about this historic goal with longtime TV analyst Craig Laughlin in just a few moments. Number 2, the Ottawa Senators are one win from their first playoff spot in 8 years. They've been without Captain Gr8est Kachuk for the last 4, but back-to-back shutouts over the weekend against Florida and Columbus. They have 10 shutouts this season. And what an amazing feel-good story in Ottawa. And oh, by the way, they trail the Florida Panthers by just 2 points for third place in the Atlantic. And we were talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs wanting to avoid having to play both Florida teams if they want to make the conference final. That may wind up happening after all if the Senators catch the Panthers.
Yeah, which is sort of hard to believe, isn't it, at this point that Ottawa could catch them, but they very much could catch them. They only have 2 games remaining against now standing playoff teams, as does Florida. Florida has a lot to win for. I mean, they're still within range of catching Tampa to make sure they have home ice in the first round. So it's going to be interesting, but it's a motivated group in Ottawa. It must be a great feeling to know that you could really do this after nobody thought you would. So there's only upside for the Ottawa Senators players and their coaches.
Number 3, the Minnesota Wild hold the last spot in the West with an overtime win over Dallas on Sunday. And this has been a team that has really been spinning its wheels over the second part of the season. You saw Bill Guerin on Friday, and he even underscored to you how important it was that the club build up a little bit of a pad coming right out of the gate with their strong start, and they have needed it to get to this point of the season.
Well, they have a pretty thin roster to begin with, and then you lose your two best forwards, arguably, in Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek, easy for me to say. And it's put them in a real hole. And offensively, they've been sputtering. They haven't been able to score a lot of goals. But you give them credit. I mean, they hang in there and they keep going. And John Hines is doing a great job motivating that group. And Gustafsson has played well in goal for them. And you know what? Hopefully for Bill Guerin and John Hines, they do get Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek back in the lineup soon.
We're going to elaborate on that race a little bit more later in the show, but Craig Laughlin is coming up shortly. And with that, this has been 3 Things You Need to Pay Attention to, brought to you by UBS Financial Services Team.
Well, now it's a great pleasure to have back on NHL Wraparound a buddy of mine for a long, long time, and I'm so thrilled that he is healthy and here with us, Craig Laughlin from Monumental Sports. Of course, everybody in hockey knows him as a color analyst for the Washington Capitals, a job that he's done since 1990, when I was just in high school, Craig, in 1990. And
one of my big thrills, though, I always used to say this, Neil, when you were the GM of the Rangers, you guys would strut off that bus. I'd be standing there, but you had the gumption to come over, shake my hand, and always say hello, and that's always stuck with me. I mean, yeah, you've been a good friend for so many years, but when the Rangers pulled into town, it was like the show in '94, man. It was unbelievable. It was like there'd be 2 buses, and no one took 2 buses back there. I'm not sure if one was just yours and the rest were the players' deal, but whatever it was like a rock star coming to town wherever I did your games.
Those are the good old days, that's for sure. But Craig, you've had some work done on yourself health-wise, and let us know how you are now, because when you weren't on the air and you were going through it, and we were texting you, but we were all concerned and rooting for you in our own way. And tell me how you are now that you're back on the air. You're back. We see you, but how are you doing personally?
Personally, I'm doing great. You know, it's an interesting story. And for anybody listening out there, the importance of getting checkups and scans and things like that, I couldn't say any stronger that please do them to stay healthy. Like, I was healthy. I had my tests. I had my checkups. I had my physicals, and everything was clear. And so Alan May, who owns a scanning company down in Florida, in Tampa, he invites anybody, you know, in your biz or whatever, to come in. He gives you a free scan, and it's just for your heart and it's for your body. It does a carotid artery, things like that. And I went in just before Thanksgiving, just on a lark, just because he kept bugging me, and he kept coming in and saying, "Come on, Locker, get in for the scan." I've got the whole team came in. A lot of the teams around the NHL coaches have come in. Just come in because you got a day off. So I went in, had the scan. We weren't doing the game the next day. I flew home. The minute I landed, guys, and this is the part of the story that's nuts. The minute I landed, 2 hours later after having the scan, my wife picks me up, and Alan May's on the phone. And from this day forward, I will call him Dr. May, because he arguably saved my life, because he said, "Craig, you got to see a cardiologist. You've got some issues with your heart." It turns out I had a bad valve, a bad aorta, I had a widowmaker, and I needed also a clip put in to prevent any future damage. So what happened is the first person I called, and again, this is hockey, you know, we're all a family. I sort of reached out to somebody and he called me immediately. And that was none other than Henrik Lundqvist. because he had just gone through that. We had signed him. He was going to be our goalie back in, I think, 2022. And he had gone through that surgery. Plus, he had a show on Netflix. And all of a sudden, our family says we hadn't watched it yet. So over the Christmas holidays, we said, well, let's sit down as a family, watch what I'm going to probably have to go through. And it's the Henrik Lundqvist story on Netflix. And it was fabulous for me having to do something similar to Henrik and my heart. So I went in February 4th, had my new aorta put in because I had an aneurysm, a new valve, and I have a triple valve now. I was born with a double valve, which is a bicuspid, which I didn't know. Even when I played, Neil, as you know, when you played, the only thing I probably had to do is touch my toes or get close, and I could go on the ice. There wasn't a whole lot of scans and testing. So I jumped into it, and I said, okay, let's plan a date. So I called several hospitals, including the Cleveland Clinic, where he had his done. And I settled in on MedStar here, one of the best hospitals in our region for hearts and everything like that. Went in February 4th, had the full thing done. It's ironclad now. I had open heart surgery. They put in the new aorta, new valve. They did a bypass. And the funny thing about this, you don't know that what you don't know. And I didn't know that my left side artery, the main artery, was totally clogged, and my body had closed it down and built my own bypass. Had it not built my own bypass, it would have caused me to die instantly because that's the widowmaker that was not working. So I was fortunate that my body built its own bypass, but then I had to get a new bypass, so we did that. And ever since, guys, I mean, it's been 7 weeks now, 8 weeks tomorrow, and I feel absolutely fantastic. There were recovery. We had some bumps along the way, including a collapsed lung and things like that, which is part of the surgery and part of the things that may happen when you have open heart. And ever since, I've been just grinding. I mean, 2 weeks after, I was trying to walk a lot, get on the Peloton. I just got on the Peloton the last couple of weeks where they said I could push my heart, and I'm continuing to push. My mind was set up as a player, Neil, and you know, being players, guys, you always set dates for a return. I had put 7 weeks, and the Buffalo game, I circled it on my calendar as my return date, and it just so happened that I worked hard, and because of that, I was able to return. But for anybody watching this, please take care of your health. Get a scan. It can save your life. I can say, honestly, right here on this show, and I've said it many a time, Alan May saved my life by having me do that scan, or would have probably been dead within 2 years. So kudos to Alan May.
Wow. Well, that's almost a tear-jerking story, Craig, to know you all this time and have you that come that close to disaster. But so happy and thank God that you're here with us today and that you're back doing these games. And let's get on to why people listen to the show. I mean, I hope they all listen to what you just said, but your expertise on the subject at hand, which you know darn well what it is amazing. And that is OV and Alex Ovechkin. I was there yesterday. I didn't come see you guys because it was a circus where I was. And as you know, the building was a sea of red. It was an atmosphere. It's really hard to describe. You've been calling all of Alex's games since he came into the league. I was saying last night about who was the guy that wore number 8 before Alex did, and we were figuring that out because we know nobody will wear it after him. So, I guess my first thing to you is like, tell us about Alex Ovechkin, just as something that, we don't know. I mean, I don't want to ask you the obvious. Tell us something we just don't know that you know from all these years of being on planes with him, covering him, watching him. Tell us.
I think the biggest thing is, when I see him every day and I see him on the road, it's his passion for the game. Like I get tired on the road, even when I didn't have heart problems. You're on a long road trip. Alex gets up. He's always smiling. He always wants to get better. He never misses a practice. Like, he will miss a practice if there's maybe a day off. But even during this run here, he went to the rink and did a few things to get ready for the chase here. And he was doing everything. People ask me all the time, well, is he just naturally great? And I'm like, no. greatness comes through hard work. And Alex has worked his tail off. And I think that sometimes people just take it for granted that he gets out there, he's 6'4", 240 pounds, and he's able to shoot the puck like that. No, he practices it. And so if I had something to say, number one, it's his nutrition. And I want to take part of his nutrition and put it into me. Hot and spicy Subway subs, Cheetos. Sushi is his favorite, by the way. There's no meal that he likes more, and he will go to sushi, you name it, as far away from the hotel if he can on the road, as long as it's good sushi, and then Stella Artois. And you have those four things together. I don't know what makes him tick, but that does. And then chicken parm on game days, which his go-to thing. So I think he's a guy that is very consistent on what he does, the way he eats, the way every game a certain guy puts in his skate laces and puts in brand new ones, those yellow laces. Every morning it's the same guy. It's the same trainer, Craig Laughlin, who's one of my favorite guys. He was actually my stick guy when I played in the 80s here in Washington. He's now close to 60, and he still does the same thing, works his butt off. Woody is one of the greatest guys ever, but he's the one guy that can touch his skate and put in new laces every game. Things like that, people don't know. And now during this run here, Ovi has kept absolutely everything. Like you cannot, everything is inscribed. Everything has a computer chip or something on it that he keeps. He keeps all the jerseys. He would have worn probably 3 jerseys yesterday or more. He uses the sticks. He asked for Strome's stick after the game. He got the goalie Sorokin stick. He is a massive, massive collector. And I mean, out of this world collector. I mean, he had to build a spot in his house just for his collection here in Washington. And he keeps everything. It's amazing. Like anything that happens, like last night, Wilson and Strome would have had to sign his jersey. That's the one jersey he's going to keep. He has other jerseys that he wore. There's nothing you can get of Alex Ovechkin because everything goes to him. Like, it's amazing to me. Like, you ask for something, you can't get it. You can get a stick here and there, but most of the time it all goes to his collection because he wants to have a museum in Russia when he's done. He wants to, Hockey Hall of Fame has obviously taken stuff. And then for his kids, his 2 boys are the love of his life. And to me, that's something maybe somebody doesn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's crazy.
Craig, how do you explain the rejuvenation of him this season? And of course, winning and the success of the club is one thing. But at the end of last season, he looked tired. He looked old.
Yep.
He looked borderline done.
Yep.
And yet he came out of the gate this season. Tremendous start. We did have the interruption with the broken leg, but just picked up right where he left off. And to have 42 goals in a season where he missed games.
Right.
I mean, he would be projecting 60 at his age, which is beyond astonishing. So can you go into what you have seen differently this season as opposed to the end of last year?
I think everybody was disappointed, number one, at the season last year, and then number one, losing in the first round. We were lucky just to get in, and then the Rangers knocked us off. It wasn't even close. And I think I give credit to Chris Patrick and Brian McClellan, especially, who did all the deals. You know, Chris Patrick was then named GM after all those deals were done, but I'm sure he was a big part of it, along with BMAC. But what they did is, here in Washington, we're one of the top franchises in the NHL as far as the NHL being put out there to the masses for people that maybe haven't played before or haven't watched hockey. This Alex Ovechkin thing has grown the game, not only here in Washington, but it's grown it around the NHL. So this is a very proud franchise after a very tough start in the 70s to now where they are. It's considered one of the marquee franchises. And to me, being that franchise, you're never going to rebuild. I mean, I think the rebuild word is out of our vocabulary here in Washington. I think when you have a guy like Ovechkin who was chasing this coming into the season, they said we have to, I don't think they'll admit this, but I think they wanted to surround Ovi with a lot of guys that would give him a chance to beat Gretzky. And you need good players. He's not a player that can dangle you one-on-one like a Kucherov. Kucherov can burn you one-on-one, one-on-three. He's going to make a great play and score.
Yeah.
Ovi's more of this old school guy. It's like Gr8est said the other day. He said, Ovi is old school. To me, he reminds him of Messier and Howe. It doesn't remind him of himself. He never played that way. But Howe and Messier played a very similar style to Ovechkin. Big, strong, powerful, would score huge goals, would, win for the team, would be a team guy. And so at the end of the day, the 7 guys that they brought in, by the way, have all had career years. So now you've got guys having career years. Now you've got Ovi being rejuvenated by that, rejuvenated by, Stromer, maybe a different line mate. Tom Wilson has come out of nowhere, which we always thought he was going to be a premier power forward. Now he played a lot with Ovi. Now Strome replaces Backstrom, which we never thought. Who would have thought, Stromer has 70-plus points, was going to replace the passing ability of Nick Backstrom. Are you crazy? But he has. And so they've meshed well. So Ovi feels rejuvenated. And I think another thing that people don't see enough, that I see on a nightly basis, they make a little thing about Ovi moving to the right wing. And then they say, well, Walker, he doesn't play right wing. He's a left winger. But they made the change in the defensive zone. So now Ovi goes back. And I think you guys know that players like to skate this way. Players like to skate on the right. They're going to come up here even in warm-up. They always skate the same way. It's the easier way to skate than the opposite way. So now Ovi's playing right side in the defensive zone. He can come back, swing. Now he generates speed. Now he gets a direct pass. Now you'll see him make rink-wide passes on the tape all night long. So now he makes a beautiful pass, which he's underrated at. Now he comes and follows it across and still enters on the left side. He scored 42% of his goals in his career from somewhere in the left neighborhood. Yep. So now I think that little adjustment that people just, I think, take for granted. Number one, it's easier for him to take pucks off the boards. Number two, it's easier to make him move his feet because it's easier to move your feet on that side, being a right winger and the way everybody skates these days. So now he gets the puck and he's making more plays. I think you add that in to the fact that he has a great belief, and this is one of the things, again, that maybe people don't see. He's got a great belief in Carberry. And when your leader believes in your coach, believes in what he's telling everybody, for us to be successful, we have to play a certain way. He has bought in. Then our leadership group has. This team, I think, I look back, we had a lot of good teams when I played, and the one thing we always had was goddamn fun. And we would have fun after the game. We'd have fun in the locker room. We'd go to the bar for a couple of beers. And I think that this team brings that. They've got something special about the way the guys react with one another. There's great camaraderie, great chemistry, and that stems from the head boss. Right now, guys, we are going through a little bit of a funk. We have not played well for the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I think that sometime is the Ovechkin effect, where everyone wants to pass to Ovechkin. Everybody's worried about that. They have anxiety. They're worried about what's going to happen in this game. How are we going to get Ovi this next goal? Yada, yada, yada. Well, they've got 2 days off. They've got today, Monday. They've got Tuesday off. They'll return to practice on Wednesday. They got to straighten their game because now the Ovi thing is over. It's time now to buck up and get ready for the playoffs.
Before we move forward to that, because we'll address that towards the end here, but I want to go back because there's so many numbers out there about the same number of games played with him and Gr8est. And like you had said, the percentage of goals coming from somewhere in that left circle. And this was also the anniversary of the Caps winning the draft lottery back in 2004, so they could actually pick him.
Yep.
But let's put all that aside and talk about just the significance of this particular record. And we certainly saw how it was celebrated by Gretzky, by the NHL. But when you put this up against Barry Bonds' home runs, Emmitt Smith's rushing record, LeBron James' total points in the NBA, there's something about the big numbers of Smith and James that resonate probably in a different way than home runs and goals. And let's face it, the home run record has some warts on it because of the steroids by Bonds.
Yep.
This record of $8.95 now has a piece of purity to it that stands by itself.
I think it has a piece of purity. Just to start off with this is that, on Friday night he had a chance for a hat trick, and we were talking, even Joe and I, saying, don't let the $8.95 be an empty netter. We didn't want to see it. Joe B didn't want to call an empty netter. We call an empty netter, I think, for the goal that passed Howe. But you look at the greats in our game, Howe passed, I think, Rocket Richard. Gretzky passed Howe. Now we have Ovi passing Gretzky. This is something, and I think if all of us can agree on it, we thought there's no way in hell this would ever be broken. No way. 895 goals. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's just not a possibility. I mean, and I think I look at it now, I'll be dead and gone if someone ever beats Ovi. And I don't think that will ever happen because athletes are getting bigger, stronger. There'll be a million different defensive schemes. We always have to change the game to try to stay up with everybody and all bigger and stronger goalies. I just don't think it's going to happen. But I think when you put it in perspective, it's a time that the NHL is flourishing. It's a time that Ovi brought together fans across the nation and new fans. I've had people come up to me and said, hey, we just went to our first Caps game. Why? And I asked them why. Well, Ovechkin. And it's amazing that he has brought that type of life. And I think he's right up there with the guys you've mentioned in the major sports. But I think this is something even bigger. I think you look at it because, it's been 30 plus years that Gr8est has held that record. I think this is something that I think some of those other records everybody thought might be attainable, but, because they were superstars and yada, yada. But I don't think anybody in the hockey world, if you would have told me 20 years ago or even 10 years ago that Alex Ovechkin was going to break Gretzky's record, I would have said no way. Absolutely no way. And this guy, it's like the players say, don't bet against Ovi. And that's the biggest thing. And they don't bet against him. They believe in this guy. He shoots the puck better than anybody. He's still shooting at over 8. That was an 86-mile-an-hour wrist shot he took last night. How does that happen? I mean, it's amazing that he's able to get that away. Sorokin said it went past 3 guys. He didn't even see it. And it's in the net. And Sorokin said, well, I thought he was shooting the other side. Well, that's Ovi. He's not going to be the same all the time. And he's changed his game to be the type of guy that can do those different things. And if you watch this year, he scored a lot of goals, tipping pucks in front. He's got 3 or 4 deflections. He's moving around more. And to me, this type of history that we've seen, I will never see it again. I've never seen the game we had Friday night with the type. That was the best event, guys, that we've ever had in the DMV. I swear. It was crazy in our building. It was all about energy, enthusiasm, love of Ovechkin. And it wasn't like the playoffs. Everyone said, well, Craig, what about the playoffs when we played Vegas and beat Vegas? Well, in playoffs, we all know that fans sit on their hands because there's nervousness. They don't want to do anything. They don't really want to cheer until something happens. And they're like, oh, boy, we're nervous that we're going to lose. We're nervous, this and that. But that game on Friday was a celebration of Ovi's greatness. And to me, that led over to Sunday's final. The Gr8est chase is over. And now we move on. But he would be considered. I mean, you look at the guys that sent him messages, whether it be the LeBron, whether it be Phelps, whether it be all these guys that sent him congratulatory messages. They know the impact, or they would not have done that for Alex Ovechkin. That's how important and how revered the Gr8est is.
I think there's another element to this too that we must address, and that is that in a time of such divisiveness around the world and a time of such political nonsense going on everywhere in the world, did any of us ever imagine or stop to think that we would have 18,000 Americans on their feet screaming and cheering for a Russian to break a Canadian's record? And isn't it marvelous that we are seeing that, and that has put a chill on the nonsense going on all around us, and that we're all getting together as humans and recognizing the greatness of an athlete regardless of his nationality.
Yeah. Neil, you nailed it. I think that's a good point. I think people, I mean, I see, in the years past, we had all the pundits against Alex Ovechkin. He's not back checking. Come on, Craig. He doesn't back check. He doesn't do this. I remember listening to all these people ask me these questions. And at the end of the day, he's proven everybody wrong. And he's actually, I think you're right now. I think he brought the NHL people, the fans together. They were cheering this guy on, like whether it be yesterday afternoon at UBS. The Islander fans were there to see Ovechkin. I don't care what you say. They weren't there to see the Islanders.
I can tell you firsthand, because I'm buried in with Islander fans at those games. Everybody there wanted to see him score that goal. Islander fans, Capital fans, didn't matter.
And what a response when he scored. The place erupted. Didn't matter if you were wearing an Islander jersey, a Caps jersey, whoever else was in the stands. It was all about Alex Ovechkin. They were seeing history. They wanted to see it. I mean, my daughter, who has seen quite a few games, she wants to see all the rinks now. So she was up at UBS last night. And she said, Dad, I ran into all these people, season ticket holders with the Caps, Pat Sajak, all these people that were in the house that are local people. And she thought it was just unbelievable that the Islander fans were thinking the same thing as she was. They were there just for that. They didn't care if the Islanders won. They're out of it, I think. So at the end of the day, it was all about the Gr8est, and they had a great celebration. I wish it was at home. Again, that's just me. But having it on the road, they did a great job at UBS, and to me, kudos to them in the NHL, the way they celebrated, having Wayne talk. It'll be interesting because I like the little shot that Wayne gave Ted Leon. Says, hey, when I won the scoring title, I got a Rolls Royce. We'll see what Ovi gets. And we're supposed to have an Ovi day here, guy. I think it's going to be, this is breaking news. I think it's supposed to be Wednesday where he gets like the key to the city again for doing, I mean, he's the front of the Washington Post. He's everywhere here in town. I mean, we've got Ovi goal counters in many, many different bars and establishments that they put together. Fans are eating this up, and I think fans around the world are going to be cheering this team for many years to come if Ovi continues to play.
So, $895.
Yep.
$900, right around the corner.
Yep.
Ovi's contract expires at the end of next season.
Yep.
This guy looks like he wants to play another 5 years.
Yep.
I see 1,000, and I have thought this probably before last year when he was on runs leading up to last season, had a little bit of doubt, obviously, in 23-24. But that number, I think, is realistic.
Well, he gave me a big hug last night. We talked after the game, after all the press was done, and I said to him, Ovi, you better stay around for 1,000. And he sort of laughed. And then I said it to his wife, gave her a hug and said, we want him around here till 1,000. But, you hear in the news and you hear reports out of Moscow that, he has 2 kids. His wife's from Russia. They're from Moscow. That he wants to finish his career in the KHL. Reports have come out about that. And kudos to him if he wants to do that. That would be after next season. I told anybody I saw yesterday, let's re-up this guy. I mean, he's going nowhere. I even told my wife this morning, I want to see 1,000. I think 1,000, for if he signs, say, a couple more years after this current contract that ends next year, he can score at a 30-goal pace, probably doing nothing. I mean, you can just stand out there and do his minute and 30 shifts and snipe one on the power play. So I would love to see 1,000. I'm looking forward to 900, but 1,000 sounds better than 900. Just like 25 goals as you're a goal scorer, 30 sounds better. I don't know why. 29 sucks. I would take a 29-goal season, but I had one 30-goal season, and that was my best of my career. And I scored at the last day of the season in Philadelphia, and I needed 2, and I got 2 against, I think, Pelle Lindbergh back in the day. And that was like, I was at 28, 29. I said, Brian, come on, put me out there. I want to get 30. 29 sucks. Yeah. So I think he could hit 1,000. I think 1,000 would be an unbelievable mark and would put the stamp on Ovi being the greatest again.
Yeah, Craig, before we let you go, because this has just been fantastic. You can't talk to somebody with more knowledge base about Ovechkin than you, and it brings out so many different thoughts and ideas. I mean, I was actually going to say to you that it reminded me of 1980 and the miracle that what that did for the Jimmy Carter era when we had the hostage crisis and all that, and that winning the gold medal that year was really important to the country. But I think that saluting a human being, regardless of his nationality, has been great for this country right now. Last question from me for you, Craig, is they got a big task in front of them now to push this Ovechkin Gr8est chase out of their head and get back to just worrying about winning hockey games and going into the playoffs on a good pace to win that first round and start to try to march forward to where they want to get to. I'm not going to ask you how do they do that, because none of us really know, but do you see it from your chair the same way, that this is what they got to do now? They got to clear their mind and get back to just the Caps winning games.
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of I would call it an Ovi hangover over the last 3 or 4 weeks, because every single day he was asked the same question: how are you approaching the game? How are you going to celebrate when you score 895? How are you going to get there? How's it going to happen? Is it going to be on the power play, the left side? So I think he's going to be more relaxed. I think the team as a whole will be more relaxed. But I think, Neil, you look at it and you've been a GM before and done all that type of stuff. You want your team going in on a high. And right now, we're not on a big high. I mean, we've played the last 3 or 4 weeks very mediocre when you look at our numbers. We're not scoring like we were earlier, where everything we shot went in the net. We have the highest shooting percentage in the NHL, but recently we're not scoring goals. That number one. Number two, the bad part is we're giving up way too many goals. Our defensive coverage has not been up to snuff, and that could be the fact that, you know what, we've got the Met locked up. It's sunny out. Well, it's raining a little bit here today, but usually it's nice this time of year. As a player, you're looking at it. The weather's better. You're wearing shorts to the rink. You're thinking the playoffs are right around the corner. We have everything that's happening here in Washington. And so now you're looking and saying we have the cherry blossoms coming out last week. So that's the sign of the playoffs around the corner here in town. So now you're thinking, okay, I'm ready to go, but you've got to prepare. And they have today, they have tomorrow off as a team, because we just finished up a stretch of 5 and 8. So we have the next 2 days off. They'll reconvene on Wednesday. And I think Wednesday is going to be, okay, boys, and this is going to be the message from Carberry, we got to amp up our game. We've got to get our game in order. They're going to have to make some lineup changes, obviously, because Gr8est is out after that skate cut. So he's going to be out for a while. You have Logan Thompson, who's didn't travel with us, so he could be out for a bit here. And so now you have Hunter Shepard and you have Charlie Lindgren as our goalies for the near future. Could be for the next week or the week after. We don't know when Logan's coming back. Logan's arguably our number one goalie. So now, starting Wednesday, there's got to be a revamp. I think the top line with Ovi, Strome, and Wilson will stay together, but they need more from the top six. Dubois has sort of went cold here the last couple of weeks. They need that big size that he was bringing early in the season. So I think the next 4 games, we have Carolina on Thursday. We have Columbus back-to-back. We have Pittsburgh next Thursday after this. So to me, 3 games of great hockey, I'd feel better going in, because we'll start Sunday, I think the 22nd here in town, game 1, and we think it's Montreal, and look at how well they're playing. I think they got to notice this. I think players do notice this, and they got speed, and that's what sort of burned us sometimes recently, where we're just sort of, hey, let's just do it, and let's just see how we can do tonight, just like yesterday. And so to me, they've got to get their game in order, and before we have a good chance to get through round 1, let alone round 2, which will probably be Carolina.
Craig, you missed one game when you were going through their schedule, and I know it's because you don't want to have dinner with me. You missed the game. You go back to UBS Arena to play the Islanders on the 15th, when you and I were going to have dinner together. I haven't asked you yet, but I'm telling you that now.
Neil, it's so funny. And again, this is, the business. And we were ready to do all the games. Okay, the national telecast took 4 of our last 6 games. Prior, they allowed us to do Sunday's game side by side with TNT. We lose. I am off till next Sunday. So I lose Carolina. I lose Columbus. I do Columbus Sunday. And maybe because you offered me dinner, I'll fly up just to take dinner with you. But I'm not going. I'm not coming up to UBS Arena. I'm flying to Pittsburgh that next day. So you got out of dinner again. You knew it all along, too.
I wanted to help your nutritional plan.
You obviously knew I was off, and that's why you invited me.
Hey, Craig, last one from me, because we mentioned these stretches of games, and I don't want to let this game go without hearing your comments on it, because what better game to get the team back on track than playing Carolina on Thursday after having 3 days in between games, coming off what was a pretty nasty game down in Carolina last week. So this is one that probably gets the senses going in a real positive way once again.
Yeah, the juice has got to be flowing that game as a player and as a team, because the Ovechkin thing's over. And Carolina last game, we had 80 penalty minutes or so ourselves. It was nasty. It was mean. Every game, I think the last 5 games we played Carolina dating back to last season, we played them in a back-to-back. So this is the one time that they can say, okay, we don't have an excuse. We're fresh. You guys have been on the road. You've been, they were beat up by Boston the other day. They're a little bit after they beat us. They went in sort of a little bit of a slide. But you know what Brind'Amour brings? Brind'Amour's they haven't changed their style one iota. They took it to us being on the forecheck from the drop of the puck last game. We were on our heels. We couldn't recover. We couldn't break out the puck. So that's playoff hockey. I think this will be a great tune-up. I also think Columbus, those 2 games, will be a real telltale sign, because Columbus plays hard. They're sometimes nasty. Dean Evison, my former line mate, has done such a great job there in Columbus, and he deserves a lot of credit for there. I know they're not where they want to be. They thought they'd be in the playoff hunt a little bit closer to Montreal, but we've got to prepare for those games to prepare for Montreal, because I think playing up in Montreal and the first series is going to be very tough. Those fans are passionate. Talk about a rocking building at 21,000 or whatever they're going to get. They love their team this year. So Carolina, though, I had that marked on my calendar to be the turnaround game, because that to me is your litmus test. How are you going to perform on Thursday night, rested, with your lineup other than Pro probably in? So now you've got your lineup. You've got probably the lines you're going to use in the playoffs, the defensive pairing you're going to do in the playoffs. Let's see what happens. And it's on home ice. And I think a lot of fans were probably thinking that's the night Ovi was going to score his .895. So they're going to be juiced to celebrate Ovechkin on Thursday. I'm sure there's going to be a celebration before the game. We're going to have a celebration in town in D.C. on Wednesday. So there's still going to be some celebration the next 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, for Alexander the Great here in Washington.
Well, our biggest celebration isn't going to be about Ovi. It isn't going to be about any of that. It's going to be about Craig Laughlin being healthy again, being back in the booth, enjoying listening to you and Joe Beninati. And that's really the truth. And God bless you. And I'm so happy that you and your family are doing well.
Well, it's just like I told Joe B, Neil. I said, look, I've got a heart problem. I had a collapsed lung. This is probably the only time in my career I can't carry the show. Toby, you got it, buddy.
You got to get a pair of those Elton John glasses that Joey B is wearing.
Well, Neil, I got a good story about that. Okay, so the Caps, because it was such a big call, they approached Joe and about getting his suit, his glasses, his shoes, and everything he wore yesterday for the call of $895. And they're going to put up a exhibition at Capital One Arena.
How about the underwear?
Yeah, maybe the underwear, because it'll be designer, and it has his name inscribed everywhere. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but it will. So if you talk to Joe B, say, everyone's going to look at your suit, but no one can wear it because they're all custom for Joe B. And, but that's what's happening with Joe B. The suit and everything, they don't say anything about me, Locker. No, we don't want anything. We just want Joe B stuff. So There you go.
Well, and Joe B's is about a 42 short.
Well, I would say, is there a short or is it just a short?
Oh, wow. Thanks, Craig, for coming on, doing this and short notice. God bless you. You know, the goal was yesterday. You were good enough to come on with us today. It's really appreciated by me and
Well,
Vic.
I love you, my friend. I'll do it anytime for you guys. Anytime.
And continued great health.
Thank you.
Most important.
Thank you.
How much fun was that? With Craig Laughlin, and he's been there for the duration of Ovi's career. And did he put in such a great package what yesterday was all about?
You know, Craig is such a great personality, and that's why he's lasted from 1990 till 2025 as the color analyst for the Washington Capitals. And when he's on, like he was with us just now, his personality comes through, and you can see why he's a guy that you'd want on the air, because his personality is so great, and his descriptions and his knowledge base is phenomenal. And I don't think we could have had a better Ovechkin person on than Craig Laughlin.
Now, part of what took place yesterday and leading up to it, and Craig had spoken about what a collector Ovi is, and something that goes on behind the scenes is the authentication process of a lot of the sticks and pucks and jerseys, and you're pretty close to somebody that had a direct tie yesterday with that authentication process.
Yeah, a former sponsor of NHL Wraparound, Barry Mizell from Gr8est, was at the game, commissioned to authenticate everything, because if you think about it, they have to have a neutral authenticator there. They can't just leave it in the hands of the trainers, and they can't leave it in anybody's hands. They have to have somebody there that is known for authentication, similar to artwork or something like that. If you find a piece of art, it's got to be authenticated that it's the real artist that painted it. And this is the same thing that Barry does for the NHL for many teams. And he also does have a deal with the Caps for their stuff, not for Ovechkin stuff. So he was in the locker room, and he told me that Ovechkin wore 6 different jerseys in that game. And, from there, and I mean, he was tired when the game was over because he'd been in their locker room from, 2 or 3 hours before the game all the way to 2 or 3 hours after the game.
Speaking of art, our website is NHLWraparound.com. And more art will be our shows coming up later this week with New York Centric on Tuesday with James Nichols from NJHockey.com, as well as short shifts on Wednesday and Friday. So let's head over to these wild card races in the East. First of all, we've got some clinchers. And Tampa Bay is in, and Florida is in, and Boston, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh all have been eliminated. So we now have 5 teams that have clinched playoff spots in the Eastern Conference. But in the wild card, Montreal now 6 points up on the Rangers in Detroit, 7 over the Islanders, and 8 over Columbus. A couple of teams I want to hit here after we speak about Montreal. And it just goes to show you how much commitment and drive that the Canadians have at this point, because they probably weren't at their best against the Flyers on Saturday or the Predators on Sunday, and they still managed to find a way. And clubs that manage to get themselves into these positions to make that final push to the playoffs, they find ways.
Well, St. Louis Blues is doing it on the other side. They're finding ways. Minnesota on the other side is finding ways to stay in the playoff picture when they've had all these injuries. So, yeah, Montreal is a great story. Montreal and Ottawa being only 90 miles apart geographically, obviously on either side of the Ontario-Quebec border. They're both great stories this year.
Yep.
I mean, Ottawa to make it, I don't think many pundits had them making the playoffs. I'm sure nobody had Montreal making the playoffs, and they're really good stories. But Vic, as we have said, why are those two teams in the playoffs this year? Let's analyze it. Well, because you had a monumental collapse of the Rangers this season, who everybody would have said was going to be in the playoffs, but they went from President's Trophy to now being in the ninth spot in the conference, and everyone expected that they would be in there. So, it takes a great season or a great run and a collapse from somebody else to make these playoff switches.
The Rangers were one of the two teams I want to talk about because their loss on Saturday in New Jersey was listless. It looked like games 5 and 7 of their playoff series against the Devils in 2023. And their effort in New Jersey, Saturday afternoon, first game of the day, national TV audience, you need to be desperate. And there was nothing.
No desperation whatsoever in their play. And they did a graphic during the game of how many star players on their team are way off on their scoring pace from last season. And the one that stuck out the most to me was Chris Kreider. At this point last season had 75 points. And now this year has 25. He's off by 50 points from where he was last year. And so is Panarin off, and so is Zibanejad off, and so is Adam Fox off, and so on. But nobody like Chris Kreider. So it's there's something gone bad in the water at the MSG this year for the Rangers. They've still got a chance to make it. We're not counting them out. I'm not saying they're not going to make it, but I don't think they're a betting favorite right now. The way they're playing is just shows no sign that they've got a chance.
Compete level, thumbs down.
Right. Not very good.
I want to also talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they're 4-10-1 since the outdoor game on March 1st. And that almost appeared to be the turning point for their season. And this club has galvanized so well throughout the course of this season. They've created a new identity for themselves. It just looks like this team has run out of gas, though.
It does, and they're running out of runway. They have 6 games left. The one thing that we didn't mention, Vic, was that Ottawa and Montreal both only have 5 to go, whereas New York, Detroit, Islanders, Columbus, even Buffalo, although they're 1 point away from being eliminated, everybody else has 6 games to go. So, and that matters because you've got to put that into the calculation that they've got a game in hand. Now, just to finish off the New York thing, they play tonight against Tampa Bay Lightning. That's their game in hand with Montreal. So if they can somehow beat the Lightning, they're 4 points behind Montreal. If they can't, they're 6 points behind with only 5 games to go.
The only thing New York really has going in their favor at this point is that regulation win tiebreaker, which is the first tiebreaker. But 6 points out, 6 games left. Not looking good, sir.
No, sir. Not looking good at all.
Let's go west, young man. The LA Kings clinched the playoff spot over the weekend with their win over the Oilers, combined with Calgary's overtime loss to Vegas on Saturday. So Minnesota, as we had said, in that second wild card spot. St. Louis just keeps rolling along, 12 wins in a row. But a huge win for the Wild, beating Dallas in overtime. So it's a 6-point spread over Calgary. I think Vancouver's done, Utah's done. This is a 2-team race now. Now, the Flames have 2 games in hand on the Wild, and they also have a game Friday against Minnesota at home. And if you look at the Flames' remaining schedule, at San Jose, at Anaheim, the aforementioned home game against Minnesota, home San Jose, home Vegas in a game which may mean nothing to the Golden Knights, and a game in LA which may not mean anything for the Kings. It's not inconceivable that they could win out. The one fly in the ointment here is that they're going to have to beat the Wild outright because they will not catch Minnesota in the regulation wins tiebreaker. So it's a 6-point deficit, but in effect, they have to make up 7 points.
You've gone over Calgary's schedule. Minnesota does not play one team currently in the playoffs the rest of the season. San Jose, you mentioned Calgary, at Vancouver, and then finish up against Anaheim. It would take a spectacular run by Calgary of almost clearing the table to get into the playoffs at this point. Because if you figure that Minnesota is going to get at least, with 4 games to go, at least 4 more points, that's going to put them to 95. That means that the Calgary has to get 11 points in these remaining games. And in the remaining 6 games, they need 11 out of 12 points. Yep. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not cheering against them for sure. I'm not cheering for anybody, but it doesn't look likely.
Nonetheless, it's been a great run by Calgary this year, in a year that was not expected, similar to Ottawa and Montreal in the East.
Yeah, and Calgary might have made it had it not been for Jim Montgomery and the St. Louis Blues going on this incredible run that they've been in. If the St. Louis Blues had just been the same as these other Calgary, Vancouver, Utah, all the rest of them, win one here, lose one there, win one here, it still would be up for grabs. But you had one team that just grabbed the gauntlet and ran with it, and we see where they are now. They're waiting probably for a date with the Vegas Golden Knights in the first round.
Remind me who said that they thought the blue streak was going to end on Saturday because he didn't like the way they played against Pittsburgh on Thursday.
I think that was you.
That was me.
Yeah, that was you.
Oh, God. Bubble Lock Challenge is over and I still suck. So, hey, let's talk a little bit about superstars. I mean, we've made so much of this show about Alex Ovechkin and his record-setting goal on Sunday against the New York Islanders. But a couple of players that continue to produce even though their clubs have been eliminated. I'm talking about Sidney Crosby and David Pastrnak. Crosby, his 14th career hat trick, 13th 30-goal season, and win Saturday at Dallas. And Pastrnak eclipses 40 goals for the 5th time in his career in a 5-1 win over Carolina Saturday that snapped the Bruins' 0-9-1 slide. Of course, they did go on to lose in Buffalo on Sunday. But 2 guys that, even though they're playing out the schedule, they never stop working and they never stop producing.
No, and Pastrnak is a great goal scorer, no doubt about it, but you got to be really impressed with Crosby. 20 seasons in the league, doesn't slow down. He, by the way, broke another Wayne Gretzky record this year. He's 20th season with an average of a point a game.
Yeah.
20 straight seasons. Wayne had 19. So remarkable. And you know what? Give a lot of credit to Pastrnak to keep going when he knows the season's over. It shows his characters. I couldn't believe it, though, when they beat Carolina 5-1. I mean, that's got to scare Rod Brindamore.
It would scare me because they were reeling coming into that game. And it was a very complete game by the Bruins. Probably something Sacco's been looking for about 3 weeks now.
Yeah, I'm sure.
More superstar stuff. Nathan MacKinnon, Nikita Kucherov, 1-2 in the NHL in scoring. MacKinnon with 115 points, 3 better than Kucherov. But as we look at their styles, and it kind of reminded me back to Gretzky and Ovechkin, Ovi just plotting hard all over the ice, hard every shift, grinding type player and skater, and Gr8est would slow the game down in his own elegance, be able to see the game like few players ever have. And I look at MacKinnon, and I'm not comparing him directly to Ovechkin, but when I compare him to Kucherov, I see MacKinnon kind of like a seismograph when you're measuring earthquakes, and he's got a very jagged style. And Kucherov, on the other hand, he can bust it up and down the ice, but then, kind of like Gr8est, he slows the game down to a pace as he likes to see it sometimes. So, wonder what you got to say just about the style of those two players in comparison to Gretzky and Ovechkin.
No, I think that MacKinnon is a throwback to the Mark Messier type of player, the bull in the china shop, but unbelievably skilled and can literally carry a team on his back. You could say the same thing about Ovi, but Ovi doesn't have the puck on his stick as much as MacKinnon does. MacKinnon goes out on a shift and has the puck on his stick almost the whole shift. Kucherov is an artist. I mean, he is just he is what Kovalev could have been.
Yeah.
If Kovalev had understood what the objective of the game is rather than just the stick handling. Marvelous skills, can do it at high speed, as you said earlier, but then knows how to slow it down so that, and has ice cold water in his veins. He's able to do things and dare you to get the puck from him, whereas most of us would have just already dished it away, thinking it's going to get stripped from you. But I love watching both of those guys, both very different young players in the league, but certainly benchmarks of how great the NHL is.
And it just goes to show greatness manifests and shows itself in so many different ways.
Well, for every Kucherov, you need a MacKinnon, like basically. And so, I mean, on those two teams, you could point to who's Colorado's Kucherov, who's Tampa Bay's MacKinnon. I mean, they have one. I have it on the top of my head, but they have a guy that has to play that role of the bull in the china shop. You can't have a team of Kucherovs and a team of MacKinnons. You wouldn't win. You've got to have the salt and pepper going together.
Speaking of seasoning, you have a question for me?
No, I do have a question for you, since you were asking me what it was like in the building at UBS Arena when Ovechkin scored. Let me ask you, Mr. TV, what was it like watching it on television?
I'm going to tell you, I thought that between monumental sports coverage on Friday in the game against Chicago and TNT's coverage on Sunday for the game at UBS Arena, I thought the documentation was outstanding. The graphics, the info. TNT also had an alternate telecast, which was more of an Ovi watch. So, generally speaking, the coverage was terrific. But there's one thing for me that is always maddening, and that is directors cutting away from intimate moments. And after the game on Friday, Ovi had 3 good shots in the final minute of that game, and Spencer Knight stopped them. And when they met after the game, Blackhawks, of course, gracious enough to shake Ovi's hand, they were on Ovi and Knight. And I wanted to see that exchange. I wanted to be able to read lips. I wanted to see if Knight was saying, I was sorry because I stopped you from getting the record. And in the middle of the exchange, they cut back. And on Sunday, you had more intimate moments with players talking to Ovi, and we're getting crowd shots. And crowd shots are a dime a dozen. I mean, I have said this to many friends and colleagues in the business. If I don't see another crowd shot for as long as I live, it wouldn't bother me. Those one-on-one moments, those exchanges, those are the ones that last. And you have to see those. And it goes for handshakes in the Stanley Cup playoffs, that when two guys knock heads in a playoff series, and they've had a great one-to-one rivalry during the course of that series, I want to see that exchange. I don't want to cut to a wide shot so I can watch a fan applauding or taking pictures on their iPhone.
Well, that goes to the guy in the truck, right? That's directing the whole thing, who doesn't understand what you just said. They don't understand it. They don't have a feel for it. And so they don't know what to do.
I think most of the directors certainly do have a feel to do the game, but that is not the time to get artistic. The documentation is seeing that exchange. I remember, I think back in 2016, and the Blues and the Blackhawks finished the playoff series, and Panarin and Tarasenko came together, fellow countrymen, and they shook hands, embraced, had an exchange, and the entire thing was caught. And to me, that's what this is about. That's what makes this game special, because you have players acknowledging greatness or efforts of the others. And I want to see that in its full glory. And I am off my soapbox.
Okay, let's move on to player notes.
All right. And a limited list here. We heard Craig Laughlin talk about Alexei Protas. He got a skate cut on his foot on Friday against Chicago. He is now listed as week to week. And the St. Louis Blues got some bad news on Dylan Holloway. We had teased this on Friday on short shifts, that he suffered an injury on Thursday in the overtime win against Pittsburgh, had an awkward tumble into the boards. He is now week to week with a lower body injury. Leon Draisaitl, expected to be out short term for the Oilers, will be back for the playoffs. And Connor McDavid, perhaps back by this coming weekend. And also news out of Edmonton is Trent Frederick, debuted in Saturday's loss to the Los Angeles Kings. He had come over in a trade with the Boston Bruins. And finally, Nikolai Ehlers missed Saturday's loss at Utah after being hit by a Cole Perfetti shot in the previous game in Vegas, but he is not expected to be out long term. And I believe you had an update that he was skating on Monday with his team.
Yes, and I got some other updates too, if you'd like them, on several different players here. I'll go through them really quickly. David Kampf from the Maple Leafs has been ruled out through Friday at least, and so has Jake McCabe, the defenseman for the Toronto Maple Leafs, been ruled out through Friday. Colin Miller of the Jets, another defenseman for the Jets, has been ruled out for tonight because of illness. And Neil Pionk, who's close to returning but will not return tonight for the Winnipeg Jets. And Nikolai Ehlers is a game-time decision.
All right. So now you have the latest. You have your own segment now.
Well, that's it. And I also have my phone in front of me that I can look this stuff up.
It is now time for the human side of the story. And to really bring this show full circle, I'm going to talk a little bit about reverence and respecting the game. And, Neil, 73 years ago on Tuesday, a lot of fans got probably their first look at what reverence looked like. There is that memorable photo after the 1952 semifinal between the Canadiens and the Bruins, and Rocket Richard had been knocked out in the second period of Game 7, was probably semi-conscious when he scored the game-winning goal late in the third period. And Sugar Jim Henry, the goalie for the Bruins, had a black eye that he had suffered in Game 6 of that series, and the iconic photo of Henry bowing to a bloody Richard seemed to be almost the cornerstone of how opponents can still revere and appreciate the other even in defeat.
Yeah, and it teaches the generations to follow how you should handle yourself, that no matter what goes on the ice, when the game is over, it's over, and you shake hands and acknowledge the other player on the other side that you had to battle against, sometimes for a couple of weeks.
We've also seen Alexander Ovechkin in a loss calling his Capitals team over before leaving the ice to shake hands with Marc-Andre Fleury in Minnesota about a week and a half back. You could look at Wayne Gretzky graciously passing the torch to Ovi. And it even extends on to the officials, where the Ottawa Senators this weekend said farewell to Derek Nansen, linesman, after 23 years in the league, and Ghislain Hebert, who refereed 1,004 games over 17 seasons. Both teams staying out on the ice to shake hands with these referees or linesmen for their years of service. And what league does this? Where when the competition is over, as you said, the appreciation and respect, it almost shows now that this is somewhat of a subculture that we've seen developing in the NHL, where players and teams make a point to acknowledge greatness or the end of a distinguished career.
It's now something, as I said, that is passed down from generation to generation, and it's what you do. It's sort of the unwritten rules of what you do to be a class act in the NHL. You do the right thing. And Ovechkin had told his team, win or lose, we're staying on the ice to shake hands with Marc-Andre Fleury. And when they lost suddenly in that game, the players forgot and started to head off, but Ovi didn't forget, and he waved them all back onto the ice to do what he had said they had to do. And he has been a class act through all this. So we spoke the other day about captains. Ovi is one that grew into being a good captain. He got it very young, but then grew into being a great leader.
You're no stranger to making certain that players, and for that matter, the history of the New York organization, always did things the right way. And you shared a story off camera when we spoke with Craig Laughlin, which I'd like you to share now, about how you approached Wayne Gretzky's final game in 1999.
Yeah, well, there was a few things that we did, and I was proud to say that Wayne told our people, he said, just let Neil decide what we should do during the game. I know he'll do the right thing, which was really a very kind comment. But I said that we should wear our blue uniforms, our blue shirts, our blue jerseys, even though at that time you wore white at home. So we asked Pittsburgh to come in their white jerseys, and we wore the blue jerseys so that Wayne could wave goodbye in the real Ranger blue jersey. And that's what I was thinking about. The other thing, we put 99 in the ice behind the net. That was the first time anybody had ever done something like that. Yeah. And we did that to honor him, and where he made a lot of his points from behind the net, his office. And so, you know what? It was just getting it right, trying to be as classy as possible. And we also invited in a lot of people who had been important in Wayne's career other than the people in New York. So that was something that we did to make sure that all the right people were there.
Great way to wrap up this show, which was clearly memorable, I think, for both of us today.
For sure.
Special thanks to Craig Laughlin for joining us and making this show special. Thanks to UBS Financial Services, Inc. NHL Wraparound and UBS Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated. UBS is a sponsor of 3 things you need to pay attention to. No other affiliation, relationship, or endorsement is made, suggested, intended, or should be implied or inferred between UBS and VNS Productions, LLC, or any of the individuals or businesses and or their respective products and services appearing in this program. Thanks to our listeners. Send questions or comments to nhlwraparound@gmail.com. And remember that all of our podcasts are on all platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, and our complete catalog can be found on our website, nhlwraparound.com. So please subscribe, like us, and also check out some of our shorter clips on X at NHL Wraparound. We're starting to add more material every day, so please look out for that. And also remember that New York Centric will come your way on Tuesday and short shifts on Wednesday and Friday of this week as we wind down the regular season and the last few playoff spots are sewn up. Pretty good show today.
I really enjoyed it, and I hope everybody out there does enjoy it. And I just have so much fun when you have a guy like Craig on, and you know, I'm at the game and I'm still learning things from him about OV, and I'm at the game. So imagine it's fantastic.
I think what we wanted to do from the outset: entertain, educate, inform, and I think we're checking all the boxes.
And give you something that you wouldn't have known had you not watched or listened to the show.
So keep tuning in, folks. We'll speak with you on Tuesday on New York Central.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.